Okay, so welcome to the Solid Waste Committee meeting on June 3rd. I'd like to start off with a roll call. Ms. Milton?
Yeah, Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Velleberg.
Here.
And Mr. Jenks, and we have a quorum present.
Here.
We have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So tonight we're basically going to be talking about bringing back the bulk trash pickup for the fall. I think most of you you've all received the information from Sean today about the rates. I don't know if Sean, if you want to go through it, or George with the talk about what the rates will be for this year, and then we could discuss some of the things that we may decide not to be accepting in the bulk trash this year.
Sure. I don't know, George, do you want to, or I'm happy to do it? Doesn't matter.
Sure, go ahead, Sean.
Okay. All right. Well, pretty straightforward. We know in the contract, and just for anyone watching at home, the contract we have with AJ contemplates a bulky waste pickup in 2021 at a collection rate of $155,000 for the townwide collection, and then a disposal rate, if you will, per ton to be determined not only by its rate to be negotiated, but also, of course, ultimately the total amount to be determined by the amount of trash that's ultimately collected, so which we can't say with certainty today. And as in the materials that I shared earlier, and then subsequently, following the conclusion of negotiations, we did settle on $103 a ton with AJ. The last time we did this 2 years ago, it was $99 a ton. So by our accounts, and George and I have talked about this, this is we think a reasonable rate and a good rate for bulky collection. So I think I put forward some of the math earlier, but it's approximately give or take about $310,000 all in at $103 a ton, plus the $155,000 that's in the contract for the collection.
That's if we collect the same amount as we did 2 years ago.
Oh, that's correct. So I should just clarify. That's if we estimate about 1,500 tons, which is by about 500 tons or so more than we've usually had, other than last 2 years ago when we had just under 1,500 tons.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I know we were hoping to get at 102. We got 103. That's, I don't think it's a big deal. The things that we wanted to discuss, things like pianos, organs, those things, I totally agree with. We need to make sure that those aren't part of the pickup. George, just curious, 2 years ago when they were part of it, how much extra did it cost us to remove those? Do you know?
It didn't cost us anything extra for the pickup, but the weight.
But the weight, yeah, the weight, yeah, the 1,000 pounds.
We paid on the weight end for sure.
Yeah, so you're paying a lot of money on it. So yeah, so I agree. I agree with that. Open up to Dave. You have?
Yeah, just a quick question. This goes to Don's last question. So, and that just goes, my thought was, I thought we had to get some special equipment or some heavier trucks in to move some of those pianos. But is that equipment that we have? It was, and I guess the question is, and even if we had that equipment, did it cost us more in town employee time to get rid of some of those things like pianos? I know, obviously, as you mentioned, it's a weight issue, right? I mean, because it's not just, there's certain things you throw out that, may be big, but they don't weigh a lot. A piano is both big and it weighs a lot. So, so I guess my question is, when you say it didn't cost us anything other than the weight, there was no cost as far as, do we have to get special equipment to move those, or do we have to pay employees extra time to move those things? I realize it may not be a big cost, but I'm just curious if we were able to do it sort of for no cost.
Yeah, good question. And the fact is that AJ's crew got most of them up in
Okay.
various ways. I think we assisted on one or two with a backhoe with some forks on it or something like that. So any time we spent was fairly minimal, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So those big things were still AJ's responsibility to pick up and get rid of. Okay. Thank you.
Jim, did you have anything?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the estimate, Sean, of you're thinking about 1,500 tons. You're just basically saying that it'd be similar to what we did last time, but in looking at the sort of the trend, that seems like I mean, obviously people there's a 5-year gap there. It seems like we wouldn't come anywhere near 1,500 tons again. So I just.
Yep.
I mean, good to be conservative. I'm just kind of wondering, like, if we, and I just want to, not to beat a dead horse, if we end up coming well under the tonnage, if we could perhaps look at doing something with those, with the remainder, along the lines of what I was saying, as far as some sort of a voucher or something for people to use over the next year. I mean, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people did reach out to me and say, yes, we do want to have a bulk pickup this year. So there's certainly a need. It's just hard to imagine that we're going to, after having just had this 2 years ago, that we would come, there's going to be, I think, a lot of people who just don't have much now and are not going to get much of a benefit from it. And we could perhaps look at a way to defray some of those costs that they're seeing at AJ's and bring some stuff at some point, next year rather than during the bulk pickup season.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and just to clarify, of course, the amount that we pay will be by the ton. So of course, whatever we appropriate, and again, it's always better and just frankly easier to be on the conservative side, just because any remaining funds doesn't go to AJ, doesn't go anywhere else. It just stays right in the fund.
Right.
And in this case, we're using the ARP funds. So it would, certainly from our perspective, be a good thing if we only had 800 or 1,000 tons. And certainly that's money we could reallocate either, as you suggest, or to another purpose as well. So it certainly isn't lost. It's not money. It's not like we have to really decide that. I think obviously we want the council to be comfortable with what the estimate is so that we can make this decision about whether to have it or not. But certainly, yeah. And then, as we've said a number of times, I mean, the pandemic is clearly the wild card. It's just so hard to know. Like you've said, I know many folks, myself probably included, that don't really expect to put very much out. And I know some people that, are hanging on to some furniture they replaced and it's been taking up their garage. And it's just really going to be hard to know because it's not like any other 2-year gap that we saw in 04, 06, and 08, I think. So
Right.
It's really anyone's guess. We should probably do a poll and figure out, ultimately we should, decide who gets closest to the estimate. I'd be curious. So.
See if we get some Vegas odds in there or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll agree with Jim on that one, where I don't think we'll get to the 1,400. I mean, I think it might be closer to 1,000. Based on the trends, but with the amount of houses being bought and sold recently, people cleaning out, and going back to that townwide tag sale thing going on, people cleaning out again. It could be that people had nothing else to do but start cleaning out and clearing out stuff. I mean, thank God we have sites like, the Buy Nothing or the Cheshire Tag Sale, and we're having tag sales. So it's one way of people getting rid of stuff, but there is some stuff that just nobody wants, and whether it's for free or for a fee. I've heard from a lot of people who want this. I mean, there are people who think we should be doing this every year, which I don't agree with. I don't think we need to do it every year. But I think, especially going through the year that we just had, it's time to have another one just to help people clear out some of the stuff they have. We are sure that we could use ARP funds for this, Sean?
I think we're never 100% certain. I hate to say it. We got our guidance, our official guidance from the state, which didn't include the level detail. Just yesterday, we got the forms from the state that we have to submit back within 7 days to indicate that we do want to, in fact, accept the funds. As Jim and I were comparing those numbers to what we had estimated before, they were actually a little more favorable by about $100,000, which was good to see. We're still trying to run that to ground, exactly why or whether any of the Board of Ed money is part of that or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think we have a very strong case. Certainly, we haven't seen anything in the trainings, and Jim was just in one this morning at 10 o'clock. Nothing's popped out like you cannot do this, and again, there's a lot of effort to indicate that towns have, wide latitude with some discretion on some of these. And certainly to the fact that we can tie it directly to the pandemic and that it's a one-time effort, if you will. Those are both very strongly in the favor from the things we've read. Certainly the collection of trash fundamentally is a public health service. It's not just a convenience. You don't collect trash and you have public health problem right away. So I think there's a number of ways we can make a pretty strong argument. And I think I'm confident that we'll be able to make that argument. The backstop to all of that, as I think we talked about during the budget, is the degree to which we can identify other lost revenues or other pandemic expenditures that we get reimbursed for, and those go back into our fund balance. And then the council has, in that case, would be able to have funded this one way or the other, if you will. I mean, it appears the money is going to come in within the month, a little over $4 million, the first tranche. And then you will start to designate and tell them what you're spending it on. So some of this is, yes, we have to do this kind of now so people know in advance of the fall that we're doing it. But, the money will be there, and then we'll have to kind of put that in a special revenue fund and then determine what the list of items we're either reimbursing ourselves for or funding like this.
Thanks. Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had another comment as far as the ARP funds go. I mean, I understand the temptation to use the ARP funds for this, and I understand that there may be a qualified use of the ARP funds. I just wonder if that's really the best use. We don't sort of have a total handle on what we could be using the ARP funds for. There could be, I mean, I would sort of prefer to use these funds more for things that are going to add long-term value to the community. It's, these are kind of one-time funds, obviously, that are pretty valuable from that standpoint. So using them for this kind of thing, which is more of an ongoing operating expense, especially if, since it's probably something we should be doing every few years. I just want to throw it out there that I'm not totally comfortable with the idea of using ARP funds for this type of expense.
Okay. Appreciate the comments on that. And, I think, how we use these funds. I mean, there's a number of different things that we're looking to use these funds for. And this is one of the ideas that I think a lot of people on the council felt is something worthwhile doing. But, we could discuss it during our council meeting further on that. I'd like to get, Dave, you have something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I see what Jim's saying, but I think actually in this situation, I think this actually is a fairly good use of the funds. Ultimately, if we wanted to take them out of operating, we could. We just have to do maybe some finagling financial stuff to find other things to use those funds for. But we have them, and I think it may not be maybe a traditional use of them, but it's definitely something that's making up revenue for us that we've lost in other situations, and something that we could utilize these funds for, and maybe a one-time use, but it may not be. This may be something that can help fund a multiple use project as well. And I think over time, people, I know everyone that we've mentioned it to is excited for. And although, we had this just a couple of years ago, everyone I've talked to has said, great, because I've got stuff to get rid of. So although they may have gotten rid of their stuff 2 years ago, they seem to have either not gotten rid of everything, or they've accumulated a lot of stuff, or in cleaning out their houses over the last year from being at home all day long and realizing, wow, I've got to make some more room in this house. They found a whole lot more stuff that they want to throw out. So if this was the Price is Right, I would be closer to the 1,400. I think I'd be closer to the 1,400 bet than the 1,000 bet. So I think this will actually be a good use, and I think we're going to get a very high turnout from people. And so I think this actually is a good time to really sort of help people clean out and declutter And so if there is, whether we do it through operating or do it through this account, I think either way, it's a good use of funds.
Sounds like we're all placing bets. I think we're definitely gonna get a pool together.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we want to discuss, like, besides pianos, organs, I'm assuming that we'll be doing an electronics and mattress pickup like we did 2 years ago, and like right before this. And so that will alleviate some of the weight or some of the issues with the stuff that we won't be picking up. And I also saw that, the pickers have to register, and we had like 19 pickers, I think, who registered 2 years ago, and saved us about $38,000, you estimated. I'm just curious, they're picking out all the metal. Do they pick out all the metal, or is there still a lot of metal that doesn't get picked? And I don't know. Is there a way that we can profit off of that? I don't know. I mean, it's, thank God for the pickers, as long as they're not picking from one pile and putting it in another pile. And I know that's been an issue. But we do appreciate them being clean and neat and careful about what they're doing. And if they pick something up, they take it with them and they don't drop it off anywhere else. But I think we should just make sure that we have a list of items that we will accept and we won't accept for that too. So, I mean, obviously it's electronics and mattresses. I think we just mentioned pianos and organs. Construction material, decking material, you said, I think, is that?
Yeah,
I think
correct.
that, yeah, and George can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that, one of the issues there, and I think I said limiting the amount of, I mean, that gets really hard into an enforcement category, right? It's pretty
Right.
obvious what a piano is. It's less obvious what maybe what part of a deck was if somebody moved them.
Right.
I mean, we certainly could draw a harder line and really come down on anything that's sort of construction related or house. I do think we're having an enforcement problem, because I'm sure if people have thrown it out before, or they did some reciting themselves of part of their house, they feel like it's bulky and they'll throw it out. I think, George, maybe you could comment, but I think one of the things we encounter, and again, it's not that it wasn't insurmountable, but some enormous piles, right? Every once in a while, you'll see someone who clearly said, hey, this is coming. I'm going to demo,
My deck.
500 square foot deck, and I'm going to put all of it on my curb. And, is that really the intent? Is that really fair for everyone sharing in the cost of this? That's a decision the council would probably want to weigh in on. But I will say, and I think George would probably caution me, that enforcing, I mean, we certainly don't want our police out there measuring, piles, or our public works guys. So I say all this with everything with enforcement. It comes down to, how serious are we and how far on the mat are we willing to go? Like even when there were 7 or 8 or more mattresses at the end of the last pickup that got rain soaked, we found a way to get rid of them because no one else was going to move them. So,
Right, because people will still leave TVs out and things like that. And the neighbors start complaining, and next thing you know, we're picking them up anyway. But I mean, yeah.
So some of it's in the messaging, like if we tell people, hey, we're not going to accept X, or it can't take up this much room, I don't know. Theoretically, you might cut down on some of that. But
What would be in terms of construction material? What would be like an excessive amount? Is like more than like 2 yards, 2 square yards of stuff, or what would be an excessive amount? Do we know?
It's kind of hard. It's you kind of know it when you see it, I would say.
Yeah, right.
Right. But it's if somebody has a couple pieces of sheetrock in there, that's not a big deal. But when you see studs attached to the sheetrock and everything else, and we had folks, I think, took fences down. You could see, just stacked fences. And the problem is when the residents take the material to the curb, and you say we're not going to take that, then they're irate. But naturally, because they've done all this work to drag it to the curb to begin with, and now they got to drag it back and find an alternate way to get rid of it. So it's kind of like Sean said, it's kind of a no-win situation. I always tell them we don't want to be the trash police, because there's a no-win situation there if you ever found one.
Well, we could put out some sort of a measurement as far as construction material goes, right? As far as what you're talking about, fencing, or we could give people some idea, so that if it does come to the point where we got to say, look, this is too much, at least we told them, or at least it could spur questions before they put it out, maybe.
Sure. Sure.
Can we say something like, it has to fit within a 10 by 3 by 3 area, like a 10 foot by
Right.
3 feet by 3 feet high area. If it's over that, then if it's construction material, we won't take it.
Right, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. That would
My-
be, yeah, that, you could certainly do that. The problem is, again, there's going to be, it's going to be in the margins, somebody who has
Right.
an excessive amount.
You're going to have people who are going to do, that's still going to happen. But I think if we put it out there, then we have a right to go to the homeowner and say, listen, this has been put out there. You have to get rid of the majority of this stuff yourself. And if they don't, then I guess we're going to still have to do it. But I mean, because next thing you know, you'll have all the neighbors calling and complaining too. But I think we should put this list together of things like that. Maybe come up with some kind of a device that we can limit construction material to. Metal pieces. I mean, I guess most of the metal is being picked up by scrappers anyway. So we don't really have, unless it's a big steel frame or something. I don't know. I mean, but we don't get much of that stuff anyway. I mean,
Oh, and like we don't take cars, we don't take boats. I mean, there's certain things on the list.
yeah,
But it's that area,
Yeah.
cars are obvious, and then a lamp is obvious that it gets taken, but it's like it's the middle ground that is where the devil's in the details. But certainly, yeah, I mean, I think and again, we certainly don't have to work this out right away.
Right.
We can come up with some drafts and circulate kind of maybe a modification of the prohibited items that we did before, circulate it with the committee and see if there's any comments or thoughts. And before we start publicizing, because again, we're probably still a little on the early side. I mean, the news that it'll be coming will be coming out, but the specifics and the details, we have a little more time.
okay.
Don, could-
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously we've talked about some of these things, but, obviously we had a list last year. It worked. Would you say the whatever we put out 2 years ago worked fairly well, as far as keeping the number of people that we would say abuse the process down to a minimum? Or would you say that we still had a decent amount of abuse in what people put out? Because I mean, it seemed like it was okay. Other than we saw people put televisions out when we told them you don't put TVs. We saw mattresses, some of that stuff. But I guess I just want to get a feel for overall, except for maybe a handful of abusers that we saw, or people who just sort of just said, "Well, let's put it out there and see if it disappears." Was it overall? Would you say that people complied with the list?
Yeah, I would say that, but the great majority did for sure. So these other things we've talked about are memorable because they're the exception. They just they haven't they weren't the rule for sure. But it seems like every time we do this, we learn something else. Like the pianos was a new wrinkle,
Yeah.
and I'm waiting for the e-bikes or something to show up, in one of these things.
Well,
and then,
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
and
stuff,
I could probably
But
add, George remembers that. I mean, some of these things, like you said, the list literally says cars and boats, and it says the prohibited items. And when we saw these pianos, especially one was like a grand piano, it was like 2,000 pounds. And we're like, well, surely that's on the list. And then there it was not on the list. I mean, that's why they're kind of memorable. Of course, we pointed out at the time, it's also not on the list is, small airplanes, right? I mean, there's all these things that aren't on the list.
Trains.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If we had a locomotive in the back of my house and I wanted to bring it to the curb, it's not on the list. So, I mean, there was a lot of that discussion. So yeah, I think we're getting better at it. And yeah, but there were only a handful. And I think it wasn't even this collection. It was the one before, I think, George, that you said that there was at least one where almost like a special dumpster had to go like almost to somebody's house because it was like a home renovation. And we were able to curtail that with better directions this last time. So.
Okay. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me last time. And I just want to make sure. I mean, so it sounds like we're starting with a good list, and now we're just sort of using some experience from the last one to sort of maybe add some of those things. And obviously, we may never get that list. People, it's like hackers. No matter how good you come up with some kind of protection for, there's always going to be a new hacker comes along with a new hack, and you're going to be like, should have thought of that one. Okay, we're moving on to the next one. So. Right. So I think that's what I just wanted to make sure. It seemed like it was pretty good. So yeah, I think we can start with that and be probably pretty good with where we're going to be and things that we have. So that's good news.
Have we had any issues with sheds, like people taking down sheds and putting them, like whether it's a wooden shed or one of those plastic sheds, or?
Not that I recall.
No, okay.
There may have been pieces of them in there, but
Right. But somebody's getting rid of an old shed or something. It's like, I mean, now that becomes construction material if they cut it up and pile it up. But,
Right.
that's why I think maybe we should come up with some kind of formula for amount of construction material that will be allowed. I mean,
Sure.
if they put it along, 50 feet of their front house and pile it up 10 feet high, I mean, there's no way we can handle that. So, all right. So I guess right now we want to come up with a motion to pass to the council for Tuesday's meeting to move forward with doing a bulk trash pickup this fall using the $155,000 rate plus $103 per ton. Is it? Yeah. So can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion that we recommend that to the full council. Absolutely.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's passed unanimously. So, so we'll pass that along, and then I guess we could still tweak it later, in terms of what we will and won't accept. But George, what do you perceive a start date? Late September, early October?
I think last time we started the week after the fall festival.
So
which seems to be
middle
kind
of September.
Right, kind of a good time. And if you recall from the incredibly detailed report, we lost we started to lose the light towards the end. So as you get into late October, it starts getting dark pretty early. So
Right.
the crews can't really work very well in the dark or anything. They don't want to for traffic reasons and everything else.
So, and it takes about 10 weeks, 12 weeks? Is it?
We budget
Less.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
so one week per trash collection day, and then 1 week is kind of a catch-all, or finish up whatever we need to do.
Yeah, and when we should make that clear to people that it's not like the town is going to go around every street that catch-up week and see if people found more stuff to put out. That's not what the catch-up week is.
Right.
Yeah, correct. And we'll try to get some stickers or something made so we can. We hate to have to do it, but you put it on something that's there, like sorry, it didn't make it. That kind of thing, and at least give people a heads up so they can make alternate arrangements.
Okay.
Yeah, just one point on that. I think the Fall Fest was a little later that year. This year it's on September 11th on Saturday. And so that should help us a little, because I know near the end of October, it ended, I think the report says, on November 1st. But there were certainly some questions. We got closer to the trick-or-treating time. Of course, nobody wants piles of debris out there anymore. So, but we were in good shape that time because it was really just wrapping up the last week of October. So I think this year, if we started middle of September, maybe a little earlier than the 23rd, you'd probably be done by almost the end of October.
By an extra week. And Don, if I can ask a quick question, as we go through, when you did the, would you find it helpful, or do you think people would find it helpful, similar to what was done at the brush pickup, the debris pickup, to be sort of having a map, as you move through the various areas? I don't know, was that, remember when we did the sort of, we moved from the south end of town to the north end, picking up the debris, or, when we did that pickup, you had that nice map, like, okay, today, here's where we are. I don't know whether that's helpful, on something like this, because obviously people are going to have to see, based on their trash pickup date, but they can at least get hopefully some indication as to where they are. But also maybe we need something like a FedEx box, like this box has been picked up, or something like that. Like you go to the FedEx and you gotta, you look for the thing, has it been picked up yet or not, to see if a street has been. But I think I wasn't sure if that's something, if that's something we can really keep track of. I mean, obviously we say, if it's your week, make sure it's out before Monday, before 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning. You better have your stuff out that week. You may be the first person, or you may not be there till Friday, but either way, you better have it out there because they're not coming back.
Sure. Yeah, and we can certainly try to do something to notify, but these are unlike the the debris collection, these are kind of much smaller targeted areas. So
Right,
your
absolutely.
trash area, your trash pickup day is a much smaller area of town. So it
Right.
should be pretty obvious to people how they're working through. You could drive out of your driveway and probably find them pretty quickly if you want.
Exactly. Right. That, I guess that was my theory too. That maybe it's too small and too concentrated that to bother with that. It's kind of like, if this is your week, get your stuff out. don't wait for somebody to put it on a map. Just get it out there.
Sure.
Don, are you on? We lose you?
Yeah, he's mute.
But
No, he's not muted though. It's like maybe his headset went off.
How's that?
There we go.
there we go. Yep.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
I hit a button on my headphone, but yeah, no, I think the people who put the things out on the first week and they're getting picked up week 6. That tends to be an issue too, because then you got trash going all over the neighborhood sometimes. So I think we should also make sure we tell the people, please try to wait until it's your week to put your stuff out, because we don't want people looking at piles of trash for 6 weeks before that. So I think that's a helpful hint too. So, all right. Anyone else have anything else?
One last question, Don. You mentioned the thing about the pickers. I forgot about that. What are they? So people are supposed to register. Obviously, not everybody does, but we ask that people register for that. Do they pay a fee for that? It's just so that we know who they are.
Yeah, correct. Just so we know who's in town, and they register and just give us some basic information, and and then they make their rounds and do what they actually do us a great service, because metal is heavy. And,
yeah.
and
Absolutely, and I think that's great. I just wasn't sure if the pickers had to pay like a permitting charge or something like that. I was just
no.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else for anyone?
No.
All set.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?